Look, we've seen a lot of different things come out today and over this weekend. In terms of bans and in terms of picks, we've seen some teams actually being thrown for a loop in this draft process. The Indecisive and Queen Army, this being their first game of the tournament of the group, they have a tone to set here.
Yeah, I am looking forward to see what kind of picks and bans will come out as we see the first ban being Decker. Decker is that staple pick or ban that we expect from either of these, anybody actually in general. She's able to play offensively as well as defensively. So that's going to be taken away from Queen Army already. I do like to point out that I really do like their logo. It looks very cute. Sorry, I just
Yeah,
had to say that.
very cute. And I wonder, like, you always get the question, right? Like, oh, who drew it and where they got it? And it's just, I just like it, I just like where it comes from. See the
Yep.
Richter being banned out as well. A ban we do see frequently. We also see it come through in early pick phases, both because of the flexibility, but also because it's just a pretty good hero. Like being able to silence, being able to pull someone in, dislocate them. The skewer is really good for the stun. It's an all around very solid hero, and that being taken away is taking out quite a few flexible options here.
Yep. So you're taking away both of these aggressive supports. So maybe we'll see maybe a steel support, perhaps a Narbash or a Muriel instead in the support options.
Yeah.
Definitely there's a lot that can come out, but one other support that could come through, that will be Lieutenant Belka. Also, one other flex option or a flex pick can be played aggressively in the mid lane as well. She's one of the best mid laners. Mage able to drop her drone, drain her enemies' mana, as well as have that aggression with her knockup, as well as her wave clear.
Yeah, and not to mention just that, it's also that Bellica can be a pretty aggressive support. You don't have to just sit back and wait for the enemy to do something, and that is something that plays very well into the play style of the support of Indecisive ManQ. So very much looking to, if they're going to be the support, that's something that we will probably see come through. Queen Army on the other side picks the Gideon. That is not as flexible of a pick. That's just going to be the mid laner. We've seen it in other lanes, but let's be real, we're probably not going to expect that. And looking for a potential Bellica matchup, but they're not even certain of that. So it is a pretty bold move.
Exactly. But the thing with Gideon, though, is he has that mobility. He has a little bit of safety if he's going up against that Bellica. Um, Excellent AoE along with his black hole, able to have that damage, have that. Able to scale into the late game. And next we have the steel. That's what we kind of mentioned earlier. One of the heroes, one of those beefy heroes that could come out that could play in the support role is steel. Steel is able to really turn things around, close the gap, catch out his enemies. He has his shield bash as well as the shield slam. So we can kind of see what combinations we'll be having coming out of Queen Army already.
Yeah, Queen Army definitely setting themselves up for a success. To say, Steel much more of a flex pick as well, right? Like there's a couple of different places that Steel could go. Leaves it a little bit more open for interpretation, and it's similar to be said for Kwang, right? On the Indecisive side, just we've seen it also at multiple different spots. So they're leaving themselves again. Indecisive leaving themselves with a lot of options, and I like seeing that from teams.
Kwang has been playing in almost every game in this tournament so far. He is the newest hero, and not a lot of teams have had a lot of practice playing with and against him. But at the same time, Kwang can really turn things around and can make a huge impact during those team fights, especially if he is able to land his tethers and just catch out his enemies. That's one of the things, though. Kwang can also be a flex hero. He can be played over in the off lane as well as the jungle. But now we've got the Wraith coming out from Indecisive. Also, more of a flex hero. He can be played in the mid lane as well as as an ADC.
And I think it's really important for Queen Army to, like, when they're looking at this draft, to almost not be persuaded by this flexible approach from Indecisive. Just in their head still keep, we're going to play our own game. We have a strategy of a thing that we want to do. Follow that path of your draft, and don't try and predict where these heroes are going to go, unless you're really certain. Like sometimes you just played so many scrims or so many games against these players that you sort of know, like, I mean, they could do this, but they're probably going to do this. I don't think Queen Army will have that insight just yet. It's still fairly early in the history of the game, after all. And the Queen Army makes a lot more sense to go for these picks that make sense for their draft, that make sense for them as a team. And Chimera, I think, fits very well into that entire description. Leaving their ADC for later as well. I mean, you've already seen the Wraith being picked up, so you know that it's pretty hard for them to deny you all your ADC options. So why not go for the jungler? It makes a lot of sense to me.
Exactly. And we have Chimera being locked on as one of their heroes, or as part of their roster here. Chimera able to just leap onto his target and lock onto his enemies. At the same time, we're seeing that Rdawggg ban. They don't want to deal with a monster of a hero that scales well into the late game. Chimera is one of those earlier junglers that has that fast, healthy wave clear, or clear in the jungle rather. So looking to see how they will be able to pilot that against Indecisive.
I do wonder if the Rdawggg would have been picked up by Indecisive in the first place. We know that the solo lane in Indecisive usually wants to play fairly aggressive, doesn't want to play from behind, wants to have sort of an advantageous matchup. And Rdawggg doesn't really fit into that equation. So unless they would have gone into a jungle, or maybe even, God forbid, a mid lane, I don't think we would have seen it show up. However, sometimes you just want to ban it out to be sure, right? Sometimes you just don't want to deal with it, like you said. Don't want to have that tank in the way, and exactly just deny it, right?
No.
No, not today.
Yep. And we also see the Narbash being banned by Indecisive. They don't want to have that sustain coming out from Queen Army because, of course, the Narbash able to provide that healing. And again, the sustain towards that beefy steel as well as the Chimera. But the next pick that will come out from Queen Army is Twin Blast. Twin Blast is one of those reliable ADCs that can put out a lot of damage, able to also have that mobility in order to like dash away from those I guess the tethers from Kwang, as well as a knockup from Billa, and then at the same time able to try and evade the knocks coming from Wraith. And up next we have the Gadget.
Yeah, finally locking up their mid lane, showing where the Billa is pretty much just sets to go into dual lane together with Wraith. I like it. You know, at this point, there's nothing that Queen Army can really do to deny you that anymore. You know what they're going to be running, or who's going to go where in terms of role, most likely. And Gadget's just solid. All they have to do is add a solo laner into it. It's going to be Xera's. I think Xera's is going to be the solo lane, at least. Kwang in the jungle. That's what it looks like for them. That's a very indecisive way to do it.
Yep, Gadget locking down in the mid lane for sure. I can see the combo that's coming out from Indecisive already. Xera's already with the Colosseum on top of the Tesla Dome from Gadget. So we already know what kind of team fight we will be expecting from Indecisive. So this is the last pick for Queen Army. How will they respond?
And that's the question: is what they're missing, right? Like, what are they missing to round out their draft? It turns out they thought they were missing a support, so Steel's gonna not be in that support role. They're gonna go to the solo lane, and Muriel gonna be coming out as a support for a Twin Blast. And yeah, I mean, it certainly rounds out the draft in terms of global presence. I mean, you'll have your Muriel be able to zip around the map, providing shields against a couple of these burst shots that are coming out from both the Wraith and the Gadget, as well as Billa and Kwang. A lot of sustain you can get through that. Narbash would have maybe been better, but of course that was already banned out. So yeah, Muriel's going to be the pick. I'm not against it.
Yep, especially if Indecisive is going to ban that Narbash, Muriel is going to be that hero that will help shield her allies, give them health, depending on what kind of crest she's going to go for, either the Tranquility or the Sanctification crest. But usually she is able to heal. But I believe ManofClass, the game is ready.
Might as well go into it, right? We know what the players are, we know what the heroes are, and know what the teams are. We also know what the stakes are. The stakes are currently that everyone in this group is sitting on 0, but a win here is almost certain to qualify you at least for the next round of the tournament. Only 3 teams being available in this group. So Indecisive or Queen Army could really set themselves up for success by a victory here. And as we get onto the battlefields, look at it. The crests are being picked. The first items are being caught up. Everyone's running out from the fountain into their respective jungles and lanes. And Rdawggg, they're going to be setting themselves up to start a good game here.
I am looking forward to a good game too. So this is Group D. The first game we'll be seeing, just like what you mentioned, all of these teams are 0 right now. So we'll have to see who will be able to come out and win and close this game out. One thing that we did sort of forget to mention though, is Simba, the jungler for Queen Army. Hey, he's from NA. He used to be a mid laner, but now he's exploring this other role. This is a new role for him. He is going to be playing the jungle. He is going to be piloting the Chimera in the jungle, one of those aggressive heroes in the jungle. So that will be against the Zaris or the Kwang, but it looks like it's going to be the Kwang who's going to be in the jungle. So he's got a good, healthy wave clear or clear in the jungle. So we're expecting him to get aggressive.
Yeah, the one thing we're always worried about with players from different regions than the main servers being hosted is, of course, ping, latency. Let's hope that, especially for a jungler, it's not going to come into play too much where their hunt in terms of the neutral objectives will be a problem. Because if you know you're playing against a player on ping, you are very likely to be able to steal that from them as an opponent jungler, of course.
Exactly. So when these neutral objectives do come up, we have the Fangtooth as well as the Mini Prime. We'll have to see how Simba will fare, as he is actually just over on his red side at the moment. But looking at these matchups, we're expecting, now that we've got eyes on the duo lane currently, looking at this current matchup, we've got ManQ, who is also a very aggressive support, and he is piloting an aggressive hero with Cabodani, able to have that poke from long range against Queen and Billa, who are playing Muriel and TB.
Yeah, on the solo lane, we got to it before, right? Morose, the aggressive solo laner that wants to get the lead, that wants to play in a more aggro style. Picking up the Zaris, very fitting to their playstyle. Then Territerror on the steal. Gonna have to play a little further back, especially early. But let's see how that turns out later in the game when the CC combos and change are gonna come through with a high health pool of steel.
Exactly. And Steel, once he hits that level 6 and gets his shield slam, it's going to come in handy during these team fights, as we see TehAssid here just taking a lot of damage, forcing him to be to recall by the Gideon, which is another matchup that we're talking about. But that's first blood over on left side.
It is first blood. It might just be countered really quickly as Simba has arrived. The jungle defense is there, but there's Nyzah. They'll be denying that follow-up, that potential counter elimination. Simba having to back off onto the tower. So does Queen. And this is just going to be lane clear continuation here. No one's going to get more than that first blood for now.
Unfortunately, Billa just having to give first blood towards Indecisive there. Simba, this is what we expected for him. To have that, to answer back and respond by rotating over onto the duo lane to help his team out, but unfortunately just not having anything happen, as we see Kwang is also over on that left side. So a lot of these teams, they have to be careful, especially over in the mid lane. TehAssid doesn't really have as much of that safety or mobility apart from her root against the Chimera, whereas Gideon is able to torn space away from team fights or just anywhere else.
Yeah, and generally we don't see TehAssid rotate as much in terms of the way that they play. So they're going to focus a lot on CS, especially in the early game, and more later in the stage of the game, we'll see them deal out a lot of damage. And that might just be the goal for Indecisive, anyways, right? Like while they have a bunch of aggressive players on their team, all they have to do is sort of hold the mid lane while both their duo and their solo lane are constantly being harassed and pushed in. And that can be a very solid strategy. Just have that solid core in the mid lane and have everybody else to play their own game around it. So they always have a lane to rely on.
Exactly. And we saw a little bit of a skirmish, but here's Simba.
Yeah, Simba coming straight in onto Moose. Moose will be able to dash out, won't be in trouble here as Nyzah does come in. Territerror under power will just be blown up by the combo of Nyzah and Morose, and now they can go after Simba. Couple of more basics, and that will just do it. A double elimination for Indecisive here in the solo lane, and that is really good because they're setting themselves up for success here.
Definitely setting themselves up for success. Simba really trying to gank and help his teammates out. We saw him go over onto the duo lane. We just saw him over on the off lane. But unfortunately for him, they have Kwang, who's also able to respond. Morose, also one of those aggressive off laners that we talked about. So he was still pretty healthy. Well, actually not quite healthy, but he was still far enough range that Simba wasn't able to close the gap on him.
Yeah, exactly. It was just that range to the tower that was just close enough as well, just to be able to make sure that you don't get eliminated there. And maybe that's where the ping came in from Simba, right? TehAssid now under a little bit of pressure here on the gadget, but will be bailed out by Nyzah that actually is going to try and chase down the Gideon here. Will be countered, unfortunately. Won't be able to get out of that, but both mid laners do go down. They do trade that out. And then it's just going to be a little bit of poke from both junglers. Not really worried about eliminating each other, just showing that maybe one of them is boss, maybe one of them isn't, and just protecting their mid wave.
Exactly. Both junglers just doing their best, responding to each other's ganks. And of course, they're now 4-1. Queen Army finally securing their first kill with it. The first kill going over to Simba. We kind of expected that. Gadget just nowhere to go to. Unfortunately, in the early game, she struggles a little bit, especially against the Gideon, who is one of the aggressive mid laners and aggressive mages. But towards the late game, TehAssid, we should expect him to scale, to have that AoE damage that we'll be looking for.
It's really got to play a big part around those neutral objectives, right? Like, that's what we're looking for. And speaking of neutral objectives, they're both up right now. So they are able to be grabbed. And we're definitely going to see some jungle rotations coming through pretty quickly, especially Chimera, of course, known to be able to take solo objectives very quickly, maybe at mini prime. And Simba's already doing some ward clearing to make sure that their vision is superior here.
Yes, you're right. 7 minutes passed, and we might have a fight around this neutral objective as both teams are looking at the Fangtooth. Simba, like we mentioned, clearing those wards, clearing and denying those vision. So Indecisive won't be able to see that. They've got eyes on there, and so both teams won't be able to just sneak and get it away with it.
Ooh, Territerror almost taken out there. Not quite enough tick damage to finish that off. And Morose will be able to do a lot of damage onto this tower if they want to. They're not going to opt for it because they're expecting someone to rotate over here. Going to go for the Cyan buff instead and let the minions do the work. Sometimes that's the best decision you can make.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, Morose just dealing a lot of pressure onto that steel, forcing him to use his ultimate, but him just dashing away like, no problem. I just, used up your ultimate. So he won't be able to use that now that we have these neutral objectives up. Simba over on this left side now, again, clearing those jungle wards, or clearing the wards in the jungle rather, denying the vision from Queen Army, or Indecisive rather.
And this posturing around that Fangtooth pit, around that left side jungle is really, really starting to heat up more and more as the dual lane is starting to now actually engage on each other. Billa under a little bit of pressure here from ManQ and Cabodani as Nyzah also comes in. That's going to be a guaranteed elimination onto that Twin Blast. Can they get a little bit more? They're trying to call back Queen. Maybe can get a little bit more knock up in there, and they will indeed. Queen getting blown up by the combination of the callback and Nyzah just jumping in on the Kwang. And now on the solo lane, they tried to do a little bit more. They tried to find Morose, but Morose is so good at using that escape. They are just not far enough forward for them to be able to be caught.
Yes, and with the duo from Queen Army unfortunately dying, this is the cue for Nyzah's team, or Indecisive, to take down this Fangtooth and secure that first neutral objective. They saw that the Gideon made that rotation over onto that right-hand side. Morose just really asking for I meant the Steel asking for help because he's getting all that pressure from Morose. Morose just he hasn't had any damage from his T1 tower yet against this steal. But this is what we expect from this matchup because he is an aggressive hero. He also is an aggressive player himself. So the steal, he's got to be careful.
Yeah, they'll usually be playing from behind in that matchup. It's nothing new. We're getting closer and closer to that mid game, that more conclusive power spike. And the steal, while the S's abilities online, it still has a little bit of growing to do in terms of sustain. And that's what we're really waiting for in that Xerath matchup. Like at some point, Xerath will just not be able to eliminate steal anymore because it will take too long, and rotations and mobility will come into play there. TehAssid and Nyzah, though, making a player for the mid lane, going after that tower, actually going after Magi, but they'll not be able to get him. And they'll just have to wait for another chance to do it. And this is looking around, though. And in this jungle here around the mini prime, there's a couple of players just hunting around, looking for targets. Won't be able to find much more than just a simple meteor dropping from the sky.
You just have to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was over there hovering over on to Simba's jungle. TehAssid might be getting caught out here as he uses Tesla Dome to disengage.
We'll be chased down a little bit, but of course there's not enough range and power to do that. Billa will be caught by Cabodani, and Cabodani has to use the blink to get out of this. That's a beautiful black hole, though, over the top. Will still be eliminated. And with Cabodani and Nyzah just in the middle of a couple of different players here of Queen Army, this is going to be a back and forth of slaughter fest. Players dropping left, right, and center, but it still looks like it's going to be Queen Army that is pulling on the short straw here. Queen, the last one around, will also be taken down. That's a full team wipe for the side of Queen Army.
Queen Army, I do not know. 11-2. These Indecisive just really scaling here in the mid lane, or as well as everywhere else, over on the duo side, over on the right hand side, while they had that skirmish and while they were able to take down everybody from Queen Army, they were able to also take down the T1 on the offlane side. Morose just becoming this monster, and now he has this mini buff from the mini prime. So we'll have to see how he's able to further create that pressure and really elevate his game, as he already took down the T1 on the offlane.
And to be fair, it is what we're sort of expecting in this matchup, right? Like almost every lane and every position here feels like they have to scale a little bit more on the side of Queen Army. We have a very aggressive lineup on the side of Indecisive in terms of the Xerath, the Kwang, even the Belica Wraith combo. The gadget is a little bit more in terms of, usually the Gideon will pressure a bit more, which was happening. But even that's sort of been swapped to the side just because of the sheer pressure that Indecisive is putting out as a team. So Queen Army, they can still win this, but they have to scale, and they're not getting the space to scale at the moment. They're not creating that for themselves, and they're being pressured out. That's why it's 11-2 right now, even though that kill count could maybe have been a bit lower. And if they want to get back into this, they have to find the room and the time to grow, and then it might be a much more interesting late game.
They definitely need to have that cohesion, and they need to work together as a team. As looking at their team comp, they are a little bit more of a team comp reliant sort of comp that we're looking at, as we see Morose here in the middle.
And Morose is going to poke the spear into a couple of targets here. Will not find elimination yet, but that pressure, just those low health bars, will put so much of a strain on the movements here of Queen Army, especially that mid lane. Like they've just not been able to rotate through that cleanly. And even the dual lane is under pressure now. Like, look who is there. It is Nyzah knocking on your door, while ManQ and Cabodani are already pressuring that tier 1 tower. It's not gone down yet, but it's probably about to.
Nyzah making that rotation right behind this T1 tower, looking for the tether.
Will be able to get it. Oh, maybe not. The blink came through, but Queen will not be able to get out that easy. Billa is trying to get ManQ in the meantime, but ManQ able to stay alive long enough for Cabodani to just come back and try and find the target of the Twin Blast. They'll be able to do so. That's a double kill in the dual lane once again. It will just be able to get taken out. There as well goes your mid laner. They will find the trade onto Gadget, but it's just not enough anymore at this stage of the game. 14-3, and these towers are dropping like flies. Such map control from Indecisive.
I don't know how. They have to find a way. Queen Army just looking to get these picks where they can. Definitely that's something they can do over in the mid lane, as Simba was able to help secure that kill onto TehAssid, because Gadget isn't one of those. She is quite slippery as a hero, but once she's able to use her root, she won't be able to do very much. As you know, we have Simba just playing around those cooldowns, but at the same time, we have the second Fangtooth just going over onto Indecisive here. Simba just trying to do what he can as an aggressive jungler. What he can as a chimera, trying to get those ganks in and make those rotations everywhere on this map.
Yeah, TehAssid being pressured back by a Gadget now, not something you'll want to see from your Gideon, but it's starting to get to that point of the game where these power levels are just getting out of hand a little bit. And like you said, neutral objectives, they've all been going to Indecisive. And even though, you know, their name is Indecisive, it doesn't feel like they're indecisive about their strategy. They just want to put pressure on, and they've drafted accordingly. And the draft is working out really well for them.
Looking at ManQ's build right now, it isn't that traditional support build as well. Definitely going for that aggression as there's Call of the Cull securing onto Simba.
Yeah, they get a double elimination into mid lane. That is crazy to see. Queen just didn't even get a chance. They tried to use the ultimate, but it didn't come through. And now that mid lane tower is gone. Both duo and off lane towers are gone. Everything is going the way. They will be getting some, like, you know, they get some consolidation eliminations here and there. But we're talking about a 4-16 split here. They've got 4 times the eliminations of Queen Army, and Indecisive is just steamrolling this game right now.
We are 16 minutes in, 5-0 to Nyzah. A lot of gold in their pocket. A lot of these heroes and these players are building into their third item already, especially on the side of Indecisive. Queen Army's got to be careful here. They have to play from range. They can't be caught at the wrong place at the wrong time, because if one of these heroes from Indecisive leap onto them and land their CC, they're going to get caught out.
Right there. That's Queen already gone just by... The call wasn't even necessary anymore, but Territerror still got caught in it. So now they're out here alone on the steal. And as much as they're usually a CC beast, they're trying to run away using those abilities. They will not be able to do so. Shield Slam and Bull Rush are not going to save you this day. And that's another knock up onto EZPZMaglll. And that is just going to be another triple kill and another fast forward. They can go to a neutral objective if it's there. It's not even online. Like, they find so much advantage without even needing to, just for map control, not for objectives. Indecisive is just, I would say they're playing with their food. That's a bit much, but they're definitely just having the freedom to do kind of whatever they want.
Easy peasy, 1, 2, 3. They take the Chimera, they take the Steel, they take the Gideon. Unfortunately for them, Indecisive just working well together as a team as 3 members rotate over onto right-hand side. But when you're looking at the map, you see that they're really rotating together. They are grouped up. Meanwhile, in Queen Army just forced to farm on their side of the map because they lack that pressure. Indecisive already looking at that mini prime, and once we hit that 20 minutes, we're gonna have that big ore prime as well.
Yep, exactly. They're able to get that last mini prime of this game, and I don't know if we were going to get to an ore prime status at this stage. Like, that's how far ahead they are. That's how much pressure they're going to put on. And with that mini prime once again being picked up, now there's even more opportunity to put on pressure. And Billa, like, we're really looking at Billa here to potentially be like that scaling ADC. But look at them. They're 0-4-1. Looking at Cabodani, 4-1-8. Like, it's such a gigantic gap. And even the CS, like, there's a 50 CS gap between them. That's very hard to bridge, even when you're just trying to stay back and farm. Like, playing defensive like that is not necessarily going to save you. It feels like they have to start fighting eliminations without trading too much back, and they're not able to do it as so far.
Cabodani, one of those aggressive ADCs, one of the best carries, so to speak, over on the EU side. So he's got to be... Billa has to be careful here. I don't know if the copy pasta will save you against this fed Cabodani. Which French team is going to be the better one?
So far, definitely looking like Indecisive, but it's not over yet as they're trying to assault this tier 2 tower in mid. A lot of health bars going low, especially Territerror already being so low on their health bar this early in an engagement is crazy when you look at it. The flank did not work out from Simba. They're gonna get
Oh,
caught out, blown up, and the rotations from Indecisive are so decisive, so
oh.
clean. Queen does get out with the ultimate, will be able to save themselves, but not for long as they just get tethered and blown up. This is not going to be they can't even play defensive anymore at this stage. And they cannot just sit on a tower because there's nowhere that's safe for the side of Queen Army. Maybe not even in their fountain at this stage.
Now they're looking at this big orb prime 20 minutes in, Indecisive, with 2 Fangtooths in their back pocket and a lot of gold, as well as a Fed 80 carry 5, 1, and 9. He's also not afraid of the CC that's coming out from Queen Army, whether that be the Steel or the Cull. But here's Morose with the Colosseum trying to catch this Gideon out, making him burn his blink. But ManQ and the rest of his team has this Orb Prime buff. They're looking at this inhibitor.
They're looking at the inhibitor. They're looking to push. They're looking to just find inhibitor, find a couple of elims, and run to the core. That's just the tempo that we're looking at right now. Nyzah taking out Territerror. Simba. Sorry. Trying to just sort of zone out. They're like, okay, if you come close to the core, we're going to attack you. But even that doesn't look like a very confident position for them. Easy peasy, looking for an angle for a black hole potentially. But can they even find it? The answer is, well, they can activate it, but they're not going to find anything with it. Just a little bit of damage, a little bit of, inhibitor shots coming through. Indecisive is clean and safe. They're looking to end here. They're looking to find a couple of these last minion waves, push their minions to the core, and just clean it up. Couple of hits is all it's going to take because who is going to be able to stop them? Queen definitely won't be able to. Territerror comes back in with his shield slam, does hit a couple, and they do find, nope, they don't find anybody. They find the core, and Indecisive, in a very decisive manner, is able to clean up game number 1 of this group. Queen Army, they tried, but they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and find their win in game 2.